Hello folks, welcome to this video. So previously we are talking about call stack with JavaScript engine, how disaster is JavaScript when it's come to actual web application rendering. So today we are going to talk about how we can uh, solve this problem with some of the tools that given by browser with the scroll stack and also JavaScript. We are talking about these topics today. So firstly we have to talk about web APIs, that built-in web APIs with browser. So we have to talk about firstly that web APIs. What is the web API, and then what are the built-in web APIs we can use when it comes to rendering web application in real time. So now today we are going to talk about these topics. So first of all, what are the web APIs? So then let's look at some example of them and what they deal with. So these are the here I give some built-in APIs that are available in every browsers. So these are the things that are available in web APIs. So let's move on. Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing before doing these subtopics. We have to watch what is call stack blocking, how this is affect the web application rendering. So first of all, let's talk about the problem called call stack blocking. So we discussed about shortly in the previous video, but we don't get the full image, né? So now let's see with an example how call stack blocking happens and what the result of it. So now today also I am going to demonstrate with the web page called loop. So we have we have to move on with that web page. Now I am going to go that web page. This is that web page. Today also, now we are just focused with this call stack. So previously we talked about when call stack and JavaScript only can't handle the web application, real-time web application rendering. So now there is a feature in it. I will check this checkbox before going to demonstrate. What will do this is, you can see here is a one box with blinking green light, green background. This is stimulate the actual web application rendering. So every each of 1 second the web application is render every each of 1 second. So if it will be green, there is no problem with rendering. Then it will be red, there is a problem with rendering. So now we can now we are going to I'm going to instruct some thing with a piece of code. So I am going to copy some piece of code. So let me copy this code. I am copying this code and going to that loop page and paste it here. So firstly I talk about this piece of code. So the code you provided use a synchronous method. This is a synchronous method. That synchronous method fetch some data from these API endpoints. That data stored in these every variables. Then these variables are console into the web page with console log statement. So the code you provided uses synchronize method to make 3 separated requests to the same API point. Okay, API endpoint, because these requests are synchronous. Each of one must complete before the next one can begin. So we talk about how call stack work with JavaScript. So here each of one fetching from this API endpoint have to execute one by one. Firstly event 1, then event 2, then event 3. When console log event 1 is called into push into the call stack, then this getSync method going to fetch some data from this API endpoint. In meanwhile, this have take some time to fetch data. So the web page is still wait for that data. Then after fetching data is finished, then it will be going to event 3. Let's see. So I am now hit the server run button. So you can see the getSync method, the console log event is called, and that is pushed into the call stack. Then the event 1 is what event 1 variable what it is point out getSync method event 1 API endpoint event 1. So that getSync API event point is pushed onto this call stack. So in this call stack, this JavaScript trying to fetch something data from that API endpoint. So you can see if that API fetching data from API endpoint doesn't finished yet, you can't render anything from that web application page. So it will indicate with red light. So this is happening. After this fetching data function is finished, then it will be going to event 2. But there is also we have to wait sometimes. Imagine like there is a one web application, there is a three boxes to render. The first box is event 1, second box is event 2, third box is event 3. When it calls the getSync API endpoint, we have to wait event 2 and event 3 boxes are rendered after this event 1 fetching data function is finished. That will be a very big disaster for web application in real time nowadays. We can't wait that long time. So how can we handle this problem? So that is the topic today we are going to look about. Okay. Okay. Now we can going to we can go to the move on to the web APIs. So I am going to my slide. So web API, I am talk about some web APIs things. So now we have to know about what is web API, and then we have to look some built-in examples for these web API. These are the some examples of built-in web APIs. So now we are going to talk about web APIs. So what is web API? Web APIs. API stand for Application Programming Interfaces. So web APIs are interfaces provided by the web browsers that allow developers to interact with web browsers features such as accessing the DOM and making HTTP requests, manipulating browser histories, and more. So what is the DOM and HTTP request? So we will talk about this later in this video. So next we have to talk about some example for that built-in web APIs. So we can get clear image of web APIs. What are the web APIs? So and there are some built-in APIs in every browser. So let's talk about some of that APIs. The first one is we will talk about this DOM API. What is DOM? What is stand for DOM? So the DOM stand for document object model. So this document object model is a programming interface for web documents. What are the web documents we are talking? Some markup documents are the web documents. So it represents the pages so that programs can change the document structure, style and content. So now we see what is the web DOM. Okay, I am going to my Google Chrome and get into the new page, new tab, and then right click and inspect. You can see this box with some elements. So now when we hover this area, you can see the difference. So you can here styles your page. You can manipulate the things with the media. So there are so many things. These are all sub APIs: console, recorder, network. In that network we can see the what media we are using, what images we using. So we can see these things, how this work with network. This is called DOM. So this is called no. So we move on the next example. The next example is a built-in method API called setTimeout. This is simply a web API that have built-in a timer. So we can use this timer for delay some piece of code with JavaScript. So what is this timeout? The method is this timeout method is a web API provided by the browsers. Every browsers have this set timeout to JavaScript engine. It allows developers to execute piece of code after a specific delay. Usually it will delay the code with a milliseconds. So we have to provide that timer to in milliseconds. Then it will start timer. After that millisecond timer is finished, it will push the function into, or that piece of code's function into the callback queue. We later on discuss about these things. Now just I am talking about these web APIs, built-in web API. The next built-in web API is a console. So what is the console? The console is an object provided by the web browser that allows developers to output information to the browser's console, and it can be used for debugging and testing. If we want to debug some things with our page, we can use this console API. Example for this console log statement. The console log statement is console the result into the console. So let's see what is happened when we done the console API. So now we are in the console API. I am just typing one statement with console log. When I enter this, you can see this console log statement. Console print the hello folks in that within that console log statement, this string that called hello folks into this console. So this API can do these type of things. Okay, let's move the next example of a built-in API. The next built-in API is a AJAX. So what stand for the AJAX? AJAX means AJAX. What stand for? Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. This is stand for AJAX. So AJAX is a technique used to send and receive data from a server without reloading the entire page. Without reloading the entire page. So AJAX requests are made using XML HTTP request, also known as XHR, that is out of our subject. So we just talk about it. And this web API provided by the browsers JavaScript engine. So this AJAX allows for faster and more dynamic web application. So with this AJAX request, we can request from the API endpoint flawlessly. We can get the data and we can get smooth rendering in that web application.